Live with purpose or drift without meaning. What a powerful crossroads that statement reveals. Life, as grand and unpredictable as it is, always comes down to a simple choice. Either you decide where you're going, or life decides for you. Either you chart your own course, or the winds of circumstance toss you around like a leaf in the storm. Purpose is the steering wheel, drifting is the absence of it. And every day, whether we realize it or not, we are making the choice between these two paths. You see, people often think purpose is something mystical, like a whisper only a few chosen individuals can hear. But purpose isn't rare. Purpose isn't hidden. Purpose is simply direction. Direction chosen consciously, intentionally, with courage. Purpose is saying, this is the person I will become, and these are the actions I will take to get there. And drifting. Drifting is what happens when that decision is never made. Drifting is passive, and purpose is intentional. Drifting is waiting, hoping, wishing. Purpose is deciding, committing, and creating. Most people don't drift because they want to. They drift because they never learned the cost of not deciding. Nobody sits down and says, I'd like to waste 10 years of my life. Nobody wakes up and says, I hope I spend the next decade going in circles. But that's what happens when purpose isn't present. You drift into relationships, drift into habits, drift into moods, drift into environments, drift into dreams that never belonged to you, and drift into regrets that could have been prevented. Drifting happens slowly, quietly, almost politely, but it drains a life of its vitality just the same. Purpose, though, has a way of awakening something powerful within you. When you live with purpose, suddenly the small things matter more, and the big things appear clearer. Suddenly you walk differently, talk differently, think differently. Your days have intention, your nights have meaning, and your heart has direction. Purpose gives you a reason to get up early and stay up a little later, working on something that adds to your life instead of subtracting from it. Purpose sharpens you. Drifting dulls you. Purpose energizes. Drifting exhausts. Purpose builds confidence. Drifting builds doubt. But something interesting happens when you begin to live with purpose. You start noticing the difference between activity and progress. Drifting people are busy, often overwhelmed, tangled in motion but separated from meaningful results. Purposeful people can do less in a day yet accomplish more, because their actions align with who they want to become. Purpose filters your life. It tells you what to say yes to and what to say no to. Purpose gives you the courage to walk away from distractions that once controlled you. Without purpose, distractions become your path. With purpose, distractions lose their power. Many people believe purpose must be something huge, grand, or magnificent. They think purpose means building empires, writing bestsellers, or speaking to millions. But purpose can be as simple as becoming a person of stronger character. Purpose can be raising a family with intention, becoming a better friend, building financial stability, choosing discipline over ease, developing wisdom, or making sure that every day you're becoming a little more than you were yesterday. Purpose isn't measured by the size of the result, but by the sincerity of the commitment. When people drift, they often blame circumstances. They blame the economy, the people around them, the mistakes of yesterday, the lack of time, the lack of opportunity, the lack of encouragement, the absence of support, and the presence of difficulty. But purpose removes excuses. Purpose forces you to face yourself and say, if I want a better life, I must become a better person. Purpose asks for responsibility. Drifting hands it away. Purpose says, I will build. Drifting says, I will wait. Purpose demands that you use whatever you have, however small, to start moving forward. Drifting teaches you to wait for perfect conditions that never arrive. And here's a truth that many avoid. Living with purpose does not eliminate discomfort. In fact, it often increases it. Purpose requires sacrifice. Purpose requires letting go of habits that feel good in the moment but harm you in the long run. Purpose requires discipline when drifting offers ease. Purpose demands clarity when drifting offers confusion. But those who embrace the temporary discomfort of purpose eventually enjoy the long-term satisfaction of progress. Those who choose the temporary comfort of drifting eventually face the long-term discomfort of regret. Regret is the shadow that follows a drifting life. It whispers, you could have done more. It murmurs, you knew better. It lingers, reminding you of the time lost. Purpose doesn't eliminate all mistakes, but it eliminates unnecessary regret. Purpose ensures that even if you fall short moving forward. Drifting makes you fall backward without ever realizing when it started. One of the greatest tragedies in life isn't failing. The tragedy is never trying. The tragedy is watching your dreams age faster than you do. The tragedy is allowing fear to silence your potential. When you drift, your fears grow larger because drifting thrives on fear. But when you live with purpose, fear shrinks because purpose gives you something greater than fear to pursue. Purpose doesn't make you fearless, it makes you courageous, which is far more valuable. Courage doesn't require the absence of fear. It only requires that fear doesn't make your decisions for you. A purposeful life doesn't happen by accident. It happens by decision. It happens when you pause long enough to ask the most important questions. What do I want my life to mean? Who do I want to become? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? What will I no longer tolerate from myself? The quality of your questions determines the clarity of your purpose. The clarity of your purpose determines the direction of your life. Think about a ship at sea. If the captain has a destination, even if storms hit, even if the winds blow hard against the sails, even if progress slows, the ship still moves toward its chosen harbor. But a ship without direction, any wave becomes a force of control. Any wind becomes a dictator. Any storm becomes a crisis. Without direction, the ship becomes vulnerable to whatever happens around it. Human beings are no different. If you don't decide your direction, the world will decide it for you. Purpose has a way of calling you higher. It asks for better habits, better thinking, better decisions. It asks you to rise above pettiness, distractions, meaningless conflict, old excuses, and outdated stories you've told yourself for years. Purpose doesn't negotiate with weakness, it demands strength. It doesn't accept laziness, it demands discipline. It doesn't embrace passivity, it demands action. That is why purpose transforms people. It gives them something worth becoming. And yet, purpose is not about perfection. It's about pursuit. Purposeful people still make mistakes, still stumble, still lose their way from time to time. But drifting people never realize they are lost in the first place. Purposeful people correct their path. Drifting people don't know they're off the path at all. Purpose requires awareness. Drifting thrives in unconsciousness. Purpose makes you examine your days instead of letting them slip by unnoticed. Purpose says, what did I do today that moved me forward? Drifting says, where did the day go? When you live with purpose, something extraordinary changes in your attitude. You stop waiting for luck and start relying on effort. You stop hoping for miracles and start creating opportunities. You stop wishing for motivation and start developing discipline. You stop looking for someone to save you and start becoming responsible for your own life. Purpose gives you a different posture, a posture of ownership rather than helplessness. Purpose also teaches you to value time. You begin to see time as your most precious asset, something too valuable to be wasted on gossip, negativity, mindless distractions, or habits that drain your energy. Drifting consumes time like a fire consumes wood. It burns it quickly and leaves nothing behind but ashes. Purpose invests time like a garden invests seeds, small actions that multiply into something meaningful. When you live with purpose, time becomes your ally. When you drift, time becomes your enemy. Living with purpose also improves the quality of your relationships. People with purpose are more intentional with who they allow into their lives. They attract others who are growing, improving, striving. They rise together. Drifting people, however, are often pulled into circles of complacency, circles that encourage stagnation and mutual comfort in mediocrity. Purpose elevates your circle. Drifting dulls it. And you don't need to have everything figured out to live with purpose. You just need to know the next step. Purpose is rarely revealed in one dramatic moment. Instead, it unfolds as you move, as you learn, as you take small steps forward. Clarity comes through motion. Drifting, on the other hand, waits for clarity before ever taking action. And because clarity never arrives without action, drifting becomes a lifetime pattern of waiting. Purpose speaks through desire, through conviction, through ideas that won't leave you alone, through strengths that keep calling you forward, through values that matter more than comfort. Purpose speaks softly but consistently. Drifting silences it. Purpose is the inner compass. Drifting is the loss of direction. But the compass is never broken. You just have to pay attention to it again. If you want to live with purpose, start by deciding what truly matters to you. Not what society says should matter. Not what others expect from you. Not what looks impressive. What matters to you? What ignites passion in your heart? What builds meaning in your soul? What challenges you to grow? What makes you feel alive? Purpose is personal. It cannot be borrowed, copied, or inherited. You must find it, claim it, and live it. Once you identify what matters, then build habits that support it. Purpose is a structure. Drifting is the collapse of structure. You can't live with purpose while maintaining drifting habits. You can't pursue growth with comfort habits. You can't become a person of strength with weak routines. You must align your daily actions with the life you want to live. Purpose is not revealed by what you say you want. It's revealed by what you consistently do. And here's something important. Your purpose does not need the approval of anyone else. Many people drift because they fear judgment. They fear criticism. They fear standing out. They fear failing publicly. But purpose requires the willingness to be misunderstood for a season, the willingness to be different, the willingness to want more, the willingness to grow even when others remain the same. Approval is temporary. Purpose is everlasting. If you wait for everyone to approve, you will wait forever. At some point in life, you must decide that mediocrity is no longer acceptable. You must decide that you don't want to simply exist. You want to live. You must decide that you're not here to float through life, but to build something, create something, experience something, become something. Purposeful living is intentional living. It is choosing meaning over ease, growth over comfort, discipline over laziness, courage over fear. It is refusing to drift when drifting seems easiest. Think about what would happen if you lived your next year with purpose. Imagine your health improving because you finally followed through on your commitments. Imagine your finances improving because you stopped drifting into impulse spending and started making intentional choices. Imagine your relationships improving because you brought more clarity, integrity, and presence. Imagine your mindset improving because you fed it with discipline rather than distractions. Imagine who you could become if even 12 months of your life were lived with intention instead of drift. If 1 year could change that much, imagine what 5 years of purpose could create. Imagine 10. Imagine a lifetime. Every great life story is powered by purpose. No great life is built on drifting. No masterpiece is created by accident. No legacy is left unintentionally. Purpose is the difference between a life remembered and a life forgotten. Purpose is the difference between growth and stagnation, contribution and consumption, fulfillment and emptiness. And the beauty of purpose is this: it is never too late to choose it. You may have drifted for years, decades even. But purpose doesn't ask where you've been. It only asks where you're willing to go. Purpose says, start now. Purpose says, use what you have. Purpose says, become who you were meant to be. The past cannot be changed, but the future is still unwritten. And you hold the pen. You can decide today that your life will no longer be a product of chance but of choice. You can decide that you will no longer be tossed by the waves but guided by direction. You can decide that you will no longer drift. You can decide to live with purpose. And once you decide, life begins to open doors you never saw before. Opportunities appear. Strength develops. Clarity forms. Energy rises. Hope returns. Because when you choose purpose, you choose life. Purpose is not something you wait for. It's something you create. Purpose is not something you find. It's something you build. Purpose is not something that appears fully formed. It grows as you grow. It evolves as you evolve. And the very act of pursuing purpose makes you stronger, wiser, and more capable. So choose purpose. Choose direction. Choose intention. Choose to live a life that means something, that contributes something, that leaves something behind. You are capable of a life far greater than drifting could ever offer you. You were built for more than wandering. You were built for becoming. And the moment you choose purpose, you begin the journey toward your highest potential. Live with purpose, or drift without meaning. The choice is yours today, tomorrow, and every day that follows. Only one of those choices builds a life you'll be proud of, and the time to choose is now. Purpose doesn't arrive in a flash of lightning or a dramatic revelation. It arrives in the quiet moment you finally decide that your life will no longer be shaped by circumstance, habit, or convenience. Living by default is what happens when you allow your days to unfold without direction, without questioning why you do what you do, and without choosing who you want to become. Most people live this way not because they lack potential, but because they never pause long enough to recognize their drifting. They wake up, rush through routines, handle what's urgent, respond to everything that demands attention, and call it a day. But purpose begins when you interrupt that autopilot mode and decide to take ownership of your direction. When you shift from reacting to creating, from accepting to choosing, from drifting to steering, you begin to align your life with intention instead of randomness. Living by decision is nothing more than living consciously. It's looking at your habits and asking whether they serve who you want to become. It's taking inventory of your environment and deciding what belongs and what needs to go. It's examining your daily choices and recognizing that every small decision is a step either toward purpose or toward meaninglessness. Living by default is easy because it requires no thought, no courage, and no responsibility. Living by decision is harder because it requires awareness, responsibility, and the willingness to evaluate your life honestly. But once you make that shift, something changes. You begin to understand that life isn't happening to you. Life is responding to you. A life lived by default leads to a series of unintentional results. You end up in jobs you didn't choose with enthusiasm, habits you never meant to develop, relationships that don't support you, and frustrations you can't explain. Not because you chose these outcomes, but because you didn't choose something better. Default living invites everything and everyone to shape your direction for you. When you don't decide, something else decides in your place. But once you live by decision, you begin to see that purpose is not found. It is created. Created by choices you make daily, created by standards you set, created by the boundaries you enforce, and created by the actions you take. Living by decision does not require that you know the entire plan. It simply requires clarity on the next step, the decision to improve your health, the decision to strengthen your mindset, the decision to change your financial habits, the decision to elevate your standards. Each of these small decisions begins to shift your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone capable of directing life instead of being carried by it. And identity precedes purpose. When you see yourself differently, you make different choices. When you make different choices, you create a different future. Purpose reveals itself in motion. People often wait for clarity before they begin, not realizing that clarity comes from beginning. Living by decision means taking action even without perfect certainty. It means trusting that the road will reveal itself as you walk. You don't choose purpose once. You choose it repeatedly. Every day you decide again, do I live with intention or do I drift by default? Purpose grows every time you choose direction over distraction, growth over comfort, awareness over avoidance. And this process transforms you from someone who reacts to life into someone who shapes it. Living by decision forces you to confront your values. What matters most? What do you stand for? What are you no longer willing to tolerate? What kind of life do you want to build? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are the foundation of purpose. They pull you out of default mode because you cannot answer them without facing your truth. And once your truth is clear, you can no longer drift comfortably. You begin to crave alignment. You begin to feel the pull of something meaningful. You begin to feel the weight of your potential. It becomes harder to waste time, harder to stay stagnant, harder to settle for less, because decision awakens desire, and desire fuels purpose. When you live by decision, your time becomes intentional. You stop wasting your energy on noise, gossip, excuses, distractions, and habits that offer relief but no progress. You recognize the value of every hour. You become selective, not out of arrogance, but out of purpose. You understand that every decision carries a cost, and that choosing one thing inevitably means not choosing something else. So you choose wisely. You choose what moves you forward. You choose what aligns with your future instead of what entertains you temporarily. Living by decision also strengthens your discipline. When you drift, discipline feels difficult because there's no compelling reason behind your actions. But when purpose is present, discipline becomes a natural expression of who you're becoming. You no longer fight with yourself to stay consistent because you see the connection between your decisions and your destiny. You realize that every disciplined action is an investment in the person you want to be. And every time you choose discipline, your identity strengthens. You prove to yourself that you can be trusted with your own future. Purpose is not a destination, it is a direction. Living by decision is how you stay on that path. Some days you'll feel inspired, other days you'll feel tired. But as long as you choose intentionally rather than drifting unconsciously, you remain aligned with your purpose. Direction, not perfection, is what matters. Even small decisions made consistently have the power to reshape your life. Because the moment you stop living by default and start living by decision, your life shifts from accidental to intentional, from random to meaningful, from passive to powerful. Your character is the internal foundation that everything else in life rests upon. It determines your habits, your decisions, your discipline, your resilience, and your values. And purpose is the force that shapes that foundation. When you live with purpose, You become someone anchored, steady, committed, and aware. Purpose asks you to rise above excuses, to act with intention, to pursue growth, and to develop the qualities that support your goals. It makes you stronger because it calls out the best in you. It invites you into the version of yourself that you haven't fully become yet. Purpose shapes character because it requires character in return. Purpose strengthens you by requiring responsibility. You cannot blame others when you're pursuing something meaningful because purpose demands ownership. It forces you to ask, what can I do better? What must I change? Who must I become? These questions make you mature. They make you honest. They make you examine the parts of yourself that are easy to hide when you drift. Purpose won't let you escape accountability. It holds a mirror in front of you, not to shame you, but to grow you. And every time you choose responsibility over excuse, your character strengthens. You become more capable of handling challenges, leading yourself, and staying consistent. Drifting weakens your identity because it removes that responsibility. When you drift, you stop choosing who you are. You allow your environment, your habits, your fears, and the opinions of others to define you. Without purpose, identity becomes blurred. You forget your potential, your values, your goals. You forget what you stand for. You start adjusting yourself to fit the path you're on instead of choosing a path that fits who you want to become. Drifting dissolves identity slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. One day you look at your life and realize you no longer recognize the person staring back at you. Purpose strengthens character through discipline. It demands consistency. It requires effort. It challenges you to keep moving even when motivation fades. Discipline builds identity because it proves who you are through your actions. Every time you act with discipline, you send a message to yourself. I follow through. I keep my word. I rise above impulses. These messages shape your identity far more deeply than motivation ever could. Purpose gives you the reason to stay disciplined. Drifting gives you no reason to fight against comfort. Without purpose, discipline collapses. Without discipline, identity weakens. Character is also shaped by the standards you set for yourself. Purpose raises your standards. You begin to expect more from yourself. You begin to eliminate behaviors that don't align with your future. You stop tolerating negativity, laziness, excuses, and anything that dilutes your potential. Purpose pushes you to maintain integrity because you understand that a meaningful life cannot be built on weak principles. When you drift, standards decline. You accept things you once rejected. You tolerate habits that drain you. You surround yourself with people who validate mediocrity instead of growth. Slowly, the gap between who you are and who you could be widens. Purpose strengthens character by improving your resilience. When you have direction, setbacks become lessons instead of defeats. Challenges become training instead of obstacles. You develop patience because you know where you're going and why it matters. You endure discomfort because you see the long-term gain behind the short-term struggle. Drifting, however, makes you fragile. When you lack direction, every challenge feels heavier. Problems feel magnified. You take everything personally. You lose confidence easily because you're not anchored to anything that gives your struggle meaning. Purpose gives you perspective. Drifting gives you overwhelm. Identity is built through alignment, acting in a way that matches your values. Purpose helps you discover those values. It forces you to be clear about what matters most. It reminds you that your behavior must match your beliefs if you want to respect yourself. When you drift, you compromise your values without even noticing. You say yes when you mean no. You follow the crowd because standing alone feels uncomfortable. You make decisions based on convenience rather than principle. And every small compromise weakens your identity. Purpose protects you from this erosion. It gives you a sense of self that cannot be easily shaken. Purpose strengthens character through vision. When you have a vision for your life, your actions gain direction. You begin to carry yourself differently. You speak differently. You think differently. Vision sharpens your focus and influences the choices you make daily. Drifting destroys vision. Without a clear direction, your energy scatters. You chase distractions. You become reactive instead of proactive. You lower your expectations. Vision fades when purpose is absent. But when purpose is present, vision becomes a powerful force that fuels your identity. Purpose influences the way you handle relationships. People with purpose tend to choose relationships more wisely. They surround themselves with people who uplift, challenge, and inspire. They build connections that reinforce their identity. Drifters, however, allow relationships to form by accident. They stay in circles that pull them down. They adopt the behaviors of those around them, instead of choosing people who align with their future. Purpose strengthens identity through association. Drifting weakens identity through unconscious influence. Purpose also teaches humility, one of the strongest components of character. It shows you how much more there is to learn. It reveals gaps in your growth. It reminds you that becoming better is a never-ending journey. Drifting feeds arrogance because it requires no introspection. When you drift, you assume you know enough, that you've done enough, that you're fine where you are. Purpose invites humility, and humility invites growth. And growth strengthens identity. At the core of it all, purpose gives you a reason to develop yourself. When you drift, self-development feels optional. When you live with purpose, self-development becomes essential. You no longer ask, do I feel like improving today? You ask, what improvement reflects the future I'm building? That mindset alone changes everything. It shifts your identity from passive to powerful, from uncertain to grounded, from undefined to strong. Time is the most valuable resource you possess, and drifting is its silent thief. It doesn't take your time loudly, with force or warning. It drains it subtly, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, until months have passed and you're left wondering where all your time went. You don't notice the loss while it's happening. You only feel it afterward, when the opportunity to do something meaningful has already slipped away. Drifting steals time quietly because it replaces intentional action with mindless repetition. It turns your days into routines without direction, obligations without meaning, activities without impact. And time spent without intention is time lost. Purpose, on the other hand, multiplies time, not by giving you more hours, but by giving your hours more meaning. When you live with purpose, every minute becomes valuable. You begin to use your time with clarity instead of confusion. You begin to prioritize instead of procrastinate. You begin to choose what matters instead of what distracts. Purpose does not add extra hours to your day, but it transforms the hours you already have. It multiplies the return on your effort. It compresses growth into smaller windows of time because your focus becomes sharper and your decisions become aligned. Drifting wastes time because it lacks direction. Without direction, you don't know what matters, so everything feels equally important or equally unimportant. You say yes to unnecessary obligations, meaningless tasks, and distractions disguised as entertainment. You fill your schedule but not your life. You stay busy but not productive. And this kind of busyness creates the illusion of progress while delivering nothing meaningful. Drifting turns time into something you endure instead of something you invest. Purpose multiplies time because it gives direction to your energy. When you know what you're aiming for, your priorities become obvious. You stop wasting time on things that don't contribute to your growth or your goals. You say no more often. You eliminate what drains you. You focus on what moves you forward. Purpose creates a filter that helps you separate what is urgent from what is important, what is noise from what is meaningful, what is temporary from what is valuable. And this clarity alone can give you back years of your life. Drifting steals time quietly through indecision. When you drift, you hesitate. You doubt. You stall. You wait for perfect conditions that never come. You overthink everything and act on nothing. Indecision stretches small tasks into long delays. It turns opportunities into missed chances. It turns plans into unfulfilled wishes. Time is lost not because the days aren't long enough, but because the decisions aren't made soon enough. Purpose kills indecision. When you live with purpose, you make decisions faster because you know what aligns with your path. You don't waste hours debating things that don't matter. You act quickly and adjust along the way. The speed of your decisions multiplies your time because progress begins sooner. Drifting also steals time through distraction. Distraction is one of the most powerful tools of a drifting life. It pulls your attention away from what matters with entertainment, noise, social comparison, gossip, and temporary pleasures that feel satisfying in the moment, but leave you empty afterward. Drifting makes distraction your master. Purpose makes distraction powerless. When you live with purpose, distractions lose their appeal because you understand the cost. You realize that every moment given to distraction is a moment stolen from your future. You begin to choose activities that energize you instead of ones that drain you. You stop letting your attention scatter and start channeling it into what matters. Another way drifting steals time is by creating emotional cycles that lead nowhere. You spend time worrying, doubting, regretting, overthinking, complaining, or reliving the past. These emotions take time and give nothing back in return. Purpose, however, shifts your emotional state. It gives you something to strive for. It gives you direction, and direction reduces emotional waste. When you know where you're going, you waste less time dwelling on mistakes. You learn quicker. You recover faster. You redirect your energy instead of letting it spiral into unproductive thoughts. Purpose multiplies time through momentum. When your actions align consistently with a meaningful goal, your progress compounds. A day of purposeful effort can be more valuable than a month of drifting. A single focused hour can create more change than a week of scattered energy. Purpose accelerates growth because it turns effort into results. Momentum builds, discipline strengthens, progress becomes smoother, and time becomes more rewarding. The more purposeful your actions, the more powerful the return on every minute invested. Drifting steals time by normalizing procrastination. When nothing feels urgent or meaningful, you delay everything. You move slowly. You prioritize comfort over progress. Procrastination becomes a habit rather than a choice. Purpose eliminates this habit because it gives your actions significance. You stop delaying because you recognize the importance of beginning now. You understand that the sooner you start, the sooner your life changes. Purpose replaces procrastination with urgency, not the urgency of panic, but the urgency of intention. Purpose multiplies time by encouraging planning. When you drift, planning feels unnecessary. You rely on randomness. You hope for the best. You move through life without structure. But when you live with purpose, planning becomes a natural expression of your clarity. You begin to structure your days around the outcomes you want. You break your goals into steps. You use your time intentionally. Planning doesn't restrict you, it frees you. It ensures that your energy flows where it matters most. And structured days create meaningful years. Purpose also multiplies time through presence. When you drift, your mind is rarely in the present moment. You think about the past, worry about the future, or escape into distractions. You lose time mentally even while time passes physically. Purpose pulls your attention into the present. It makes you aware, engaged, and intentional. You stop wasting mental energy and start using it wisely. You become more productive, more focused, more creative. Presence increases the quality of your time, and high-quality time leads to high-quality results. Drifting steals time quietly because it makes you believe you'll always have more of it. Purpose multiplies time intentionally because it reminds you that every hour counts, every day matters, and every decision shapes your future.